People all around the world love sport. From playing ball in the backyard through to the Olympic and Paralympic podiums, the majority of the world's population play, watch and enjoy sport. Steve Dart from Play Hard Sports gives listeners the chance to meet people from across the world of entertainment, sports and business who are affecting the way international sport is unfolding. So, with the combination of technology, passion and great people wanting to tell their story, it gives rise to Play Hard Sports Behind the Games podcast.
Behind the Games podcast is a motivational podcast with athletes, brands and sports businesses whom all share their power stories to success in the business of sports. Today's guest is Sport Eng Brisbane Principal, Dr. Marke Jennings-Temple. Good morning, Mark. How are you?
Good morning, Steve. I'm very well, thank you.
Mark, with 19 years of experience and as the principal of the Sport Eng Brisbane office, recently opened in February 2018, you're responsible for driving growth of the Sport Eng range of services into Queensland, New Zealand and Asia. Whilst capitalising on the incredible success of the Sport Eng company led by Jared Hill and Gray Canning, and since first trading back in 2014, how does that feel to be part of that brand?
It's a great experience. I'm really grateful for this opportunity that I've had. I'd watched the Sport Eng brand grow and develop, and to be part of it now, and with the great team that's in Melbourne and my growing team here in Brisbane, I'm having a fantastic time. It's a great experience. Who
are your team in Brisbane?
So there's three of us now. There's me, obviously, and I've got a civil engineer called Patrick Beasley working for me. He's a really interesting guy. He is a civil engineer by training. He's a few years out of university and he's really passionate about sport. So he was very clear in his career that he wanted to work with sport and sports facilities. He took the risk. He's in a long-term relationship. He took the risk to leave Brisbane, head down to Melbourne and go and work with our head office staff down in Melbourne and to really learn about the industry. And that was before there was any suggestion there might be a Brisbane office. And now at the end of last year, he came and joined the office. So he's sort of come home and he's really happy that he's back in Brisbane and working with sport. I think he feels like life's pretty good at the moment.
And who else is there?
So we've got Ayla McDonald. She's our design drafter and she's come into the business. She's got a sort of a background in architecture. She's actually finishing a degree and has got a really great skill set that she brings to the business in terms of a lot of our graphics and our technical drawing capabilities. And we actually first met Ayla as part of the Com Games. So she was working for the organising committee, responsible for a lot of the overlay designs and overlay work. And we came across her while we were working on the Com Games, and that conversation continued. And once she finished the contract, it was pretty straightforward that we were going to offer her a position.
That's great to hear. Actually, Sport Eng were a big part of the Commonwealth Games overlay. Tell me a bit about that. I know it was before your time, but what was your takeaways from that big event?
Yeah, that was an incredible event for us as a company, and I always get a lot out of being involved in major events. You see sport, a very different side of sport and the delivery of that sport. So we were involved. We designed the beach volleyball court, and then we also did all of the civil engineering design work that converted Metricon Stadium into an elite athletics venue, and then designed it back out again to return it back to being that venue. An incredible experience. I came in quite late, so my role was very much around that remediation phase, if you like, taking it back to being an AFL venue. But a great experience for the company to sort of be involved in that delivery of such a high quality sports facility.
You had some time restraints. Obviously you delivered it back within that time. Was there pressure on that for you? Did you feel that? Yeah,
absolutely. The process of building an athletics track within a venue like that is extremely complicated. We're bringing in base course materials. There's an asphalt layer. There's the actual track itself, and then removing all of that and maintaining the integrity of what is the oval, and then re-establishing and reinstating the pitch is extremely challenging, and to get the pitch right. And then there was the very tight time frames from bump out, removing the temporary stands, providing us with access, removing all the other infrastructure and bringing the pitch back in and the turf back in and getting that established in time, ready for the first match. It was very highly organised, all the time frames were very clear. And I think we all work well together with the contract team, with the stadium team, and then us and the civil contractor to really pull all that together.
Cockram Constructions Queensland was the contract team. How were they to work with?
Oh, they were great. Yeah, really, really passionate about delivering a high quality result, both on the main oval and on the sort of practice oval outside. Really enjoyed working with them. They're a good bunch.
And by all reports from the athletes, it was a good venue, good facility, good track. What you heard?
Yeah, from the feedback we've had, the track itself was very good. The warm-up spaces were really good, and the actual quality of the workmanship and the quality of the finish was very high.
Great to hear. Okay, let's go deeper with SportEng. Experts in the planning, design and construction supervision of sports field of play, with extensive experience with both natural and synthetic surfaces, having delivered fields of play both nationally and internationally. Obviously, you're taking a lot of the SportEng brand now into Queensland, New Zealand and Asia. How do you feel about doing that as a lead?
I'm really enjoying it. I was in New Zealand for 8.5 years before I moved to Australia. I've got a superb network over there. I know the industry very well. The people there know me very well. So it's relatively straightforward to take the strength, if you like, of the SportEng brand and take that over into New Zealand. We've got a couple of really good projects on the go, really high profile projects, some really challenging us to think a little bit differently as well, particularly around sustainable water and sustainable use of water. Asia's a little bit different. So I have a role with one of the major governing bodies of sport that sees me deliver workshops around the region. So that gets me exposed to the region, but otherwise it's quite challenging doing work in Asia. You have to be there quite regularly, and that has quite a huge cost. But there's still opportunities for us to get up there and do some good work. And a lot of the regions I work with are quite poor, particularly the OFC region, if you think about football. So you've got all the Cook Islands and the sort of Pacific Island nations. So it feels really rewarding to be able to assist them to make some good decisions and use their money very wisely.
Let's talk about New Zealand. It's renowned for its seismic activity. How does that change things from a design point of view?
From a design point of view, where I did the bulk of my work in Auckland, it doesn't really change a great deal. And in fact, even down in sort of Christchurch and the areas that are being more affected by the earthquake, there's not a huge amount you can do around the infrastructure itself. We're talking about hollow chambers, air-filled spaces predominantly. And if there's an earthquake and there's seismic activity, they're invariably going to rise to the surface, and they just don't have the mass to hold them down. And it's an unfortunate side effect, really. The challenge then comes with remediating those surfaces afterwards and all of the services that are in there, and seeing what we can retain, if anything, after a major event.
Okay. Let's talk about your history, especially your education. The early days, 1994 to 1997, 3 years at Bangor University of Wales, Bangor, UK. Honours in agroforestry. Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, agroforestry is kind of an interesting one. I often just introduce it as agriculture and forestry, because agroforestry is kind of hard to picture what that is. What it really gave me is a fantastic grounding in a lot of the sciences. So agriculture, forestry, soil science, water management, crop science, biology, plant biology. It gave me that grounding across such a broad range of topics, and not only on the individual topics, but on how they interact as well. So I feel like it gave me a really clever way, if you like, to think about how systems and processes all fit together and what the interactions are, and how things are often linked, and looking for those linkages and those knock-on effects when you start looking at one thing, understanding that it has huge impact on other things as well. And so that sort of broad topic base, I think, has been really useful as I've sort of progressed in my career.
All right. Tell me about the next stage, which was Cranfield University at Bedfordshire. You got into water management, soil and water engineering. Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah. So what I effectively did was tease out the bits that I most enjoyed from my first degree, and went and studied that in a bit more detail in my master's degree. So this was all around or very much focused on water management, sustainable water use, understanding how water interacts with soil, how plants interact with that water within the soil, and really how we can manage that water resource, which is one of the sort of key pieces of a sustainable water management strategy, if you like, is using what you've got as effectively as you can. And so it really gave me and taught me those principles on how to optimize your water use and water management in the context of soil science and soil physics.
Cranfield University, 2001 to 2005 for 4 years, Engineering Doctorate Research Engineer in Soil Science, Sports Field Playing Quality. Tell me about that. That sounds like an exciting part of your life there.
No, it was a big part of my life. It was quite stressful. It's not often you get given a topic to go and work on and to say, come back in 4 years with an answer. Of course, there was interaction along the way, but it is quite challenging. It can be quite a lonely experience. but an incredible.
Why do you say that?
Well, there's not many other people that do doctorate programs.
Okay.
And there's no one else doing it in what you're doing it in. That's the whole point. So it's quite hard to sort of share your experiences with people for people to really understand what you're doing.
Okay.
And it's quite a stressful process. Yeah, I certainly found it very stressful as much as I did very rewarding and very enjoyable. I was quite glad it was over, but I'm really proud that I have it and that I pushed on and did it. But it was a tough 4 years, but it really got me exposed to sport at a high level. My doctorate research used a lot of the elite venues around the UK, soccer venues, football venues, Premier League venues primarily. And so I visited them regularly throughout that 4-year period, collecting a lot of data and then analysed that data at the end.
What were your friends doing around that time?
I'd got friends doing a whole host of different things. A lot of my friends had sort of finished studying after their first degree, and then they were sort of progressing with their career. And I think that's one of the things that made studying for the doctorate quite hard, is watching friends earning money, enjoying having some money in their pockets, going and traveling, doing things and kind of getting on with life. Yep. And it can often feel, particularly as I sort of went straight through the process of study, you're sort of in limbo a little bit. You want that, but you have to sort of wait till you're finished.
In 2006, you started sports surface consultant for 4 years. How was that?
That was an amazing experience. So I was working with a guy called Dr. Richard Gibbs. He's an English guy, but been out in New Zealand for a long time. And I'd been using his science papers and his books and that sort of thing as part of my doctorate studies. So when the opportunity came up to go and work with him, I obviously didn't hesitate. It's a long way to go, moving halfway around the world.
Absolutely.
But he really gave me that first opportunity and gave me that grounding in sort of turf and turf management and really understanding how we deliver this sort of science-based knowledge and how we deliver that to clients. 2010,
sports surfaces and facilities consultant down in New Zealand in Auckland. How was that?
Yeah, well, this was still in Auckland, so I sort of jumped ship, if you like. I got an opportunity to run a sort of a turf division within a multidisciplinary civil engineering company. They recognised that capability would bring in work for the rest of the team. It would bring in survey work, geotech work, civil engineering work. So I sort of headed up that team. It was only really a team of one, but started to sort of establish that company in the turf space and the sports surface space.
2012, owner of Principal Consult Renovate Turf Consultants, Auckland. That was 2 years. Then you went 2014, Director of Operations Asia Pacific STRI, which is Sports Turf Research Institute in Brisbane. It sounds like exciting times as well.
Yeah, so I'd had 2 and a bit years running my own business and it had gone really well. I definitely felt like I needed another challenge. And so running my own business is a great way to step out of your comfort zone. Yeah. And you have to learn a whole load of new skills that your science-based background does not give you. So I'd really enjoyed it. But at the same time, actually, as a result of that, I think it got the interest of another company, this British company that was looking for somebody to run their Brisbane operation. And that operation actually covered all of Asia Pacific. So I sort of approached them and said, look, I'm keen. I'd had 8.5 years in New Zealand. I loved it, but I was certainly ready for the next challenge. And then being exposed to a research organization, we had a research station. We were doing work all over the world. It was really that move in 2014 that really changed the sort of course of my career, if you like.
You ended up going on to Sport Eng as the principal for Brisbane for 1 year and 8 months. How did that come about?
Yeah, that's quite an interesting story. So the previous role was very challenging, particularly in terms of how much I was away, and sort of still expected, obviously, to run a business in Australia where there was 2 offices and staff, while also being away and on the road quite a lot, and it became quite challenging to juggle it all. So I was looking for something a bit different, and I was looking for something that was a bit more focused on Australia or a bit more local. And at the same time, I'd watched this company, Sport Eng, grow really out of nothing. I'd been around in Australia 3 or 4 years by this point, and I'd seen just how quickly Sport Eng had become embedded in the industry, the sort of projects they were working on. And what really attracted me to Sport Eng as well, this is from when I was really on the outside looking in, was that they weren't just turf and grass. they're civil engineers, so they were getting involved in the athletics track, the Deakin University sort of projects, and hard courts, and all sports, and all fields of play, and that really appealed to me. That it gave me, particularly at this point in my career, another step. Suddenly I'm dealing with more surfaces, different surfaces, engaging with engineers, and the ability to grow and learn again was really important.
So how did you actually meet Jared?
That was a deliberate meeting.
Yep.
So we'd interacted a few times at conferences. We knew who each other were, but we'd never really spoken properly.
Yep.
And I got in touch with him one day and said, why don't we catch up for a coffee? So there was sort of half an hour of just sort of niceties and just sort of chewing the fat, talking about the weather, with him probably thinking, why is he called this meeting?
Yeah.
And I said after about half an hour, look, there's a reason why I'm here, and I'm looking for another opportunity. I've watched you guys grow, and really keen to see if you would be interested in expanding the business. I don't want to move to Melbourne, but would you be interested in opening an office and supporting me open an office in Brisbane? And
so you seeded that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was.
It's interesting.
Yeah, very deliberate.
Okay. And he said,
yeah, that sounds great.
I love that.
So yeah, sort of 6 months of planning and talking, and yeah, February.
He said, I'll check with Gray.
Yeah. I know. I think I'll tell Gray.
So what have you found, obviously, getting around Gray and Jared, how they operate businesses, and what have you learned, and what have you helped deliver for them?
Well, I think I brought a reasonable amount of sort of business acumen, if you like. I learned, as challenging as my previous role was, I learned a heck of a lot from the CEO, and I reported directly into the board. So I understood how to report business performance and what was expected. I learned a huge amount in that role, and I ran my own business as well. So I was very confident in terms of building a business, developing a business, going out and winning work. And then what I learned from Jared and Gray is, the importance of all those underlying processes and systems and detail, and getting it right and getting the engineering right. And Jared and Gray are great characters. They're quite different. Gray is very technical, very focused on delivering high quality work. The quality control person, it's as a result of him that we deliver such good quality work primarily. That's his passion. And then Jared is he's extremely passionate about the sport and the industry, and he's great at getting out there and building those relationships with clients. And I've learned a lot from Jared in terms of the way that he develops the business and develops business with clients and finds opportunities and gets excited about that with them.
What's the Sport Eng brand like in the market now?
I think my opinion is it's very strong. I think we've emerged out from being considered a Melbourne business now to being an Australian business. I think just having another office helps that. We're looking at Sydney very seriously. It makes sense. We've got additional office in Narre Warren, just outside Melbourne. That's really to help staff commute a bit less. It's better for them to feel a bit more settled and not spending so much time in traffic, but still able to do their job and do their work. So I feel like we're really growing and spreading, and in fact the Melbourne business has just taken on 2 more staff. So,
what is the culture of Sport Eng? What are you guys searching for? You're there to deliver obviously good experiences for the staff, but you're there to educate the market and what's coming?
I think it's important that we do that. I think we always have to go and sit down with clients and be able to present something new or something different or an alternative approach or bring an experience from somewhere else. Otherwise, I think we'd fail to keep our relevance. I think it's really important that we do maintain a position at the forefront of what's happening in the industry, and we understand innovation, and we also look across sectors and see if there's any innovations that we can bring into the field of play industry, and particularly as we're dealing with so many different sports, so many different services, so many different technologies, there's always crossover from other sports.
Is there any innovation that's top of mind at the moment that you guys are looking at, or can you share with that?
Yeah, we often don't create those things ourselves, but we certainly look for technologies that are being used in other parts of the world or other industries and see if we can apply them into sport. And I think the key one at the moment is anything around water and water management and water use, particularly around with natural turf. Natural turf is often sort of seen as the bad guy, requires a lot of water, there's always irrigation required. So we're looking at a few technologies now, both in a project here and a project in New Zealand, where it's a much more sustainable use of the water, capturing reuse, treating on site. not putting straight out into the drains, and actually minimizing our draw off the main supply, off the town supply water. And I think that's a really exciting.
Very exciting.
It is very exciting, and it has a huge amount of potential, not just in sport, but in passive areas. Irrigating from below ground is always more effective. So you use a lot less water when you do it that way.
Let's talk about the synthetic grass that's coming into the market now. You've just finished Mitchelton. Obviously, that's been a signature product for the Council of Brisbane. Tell me a bit about your view on that.
My view on synthetic turf and how I feel about where that sort of fits. Yeah, look, I would be, particularly as my background is natural turf, I'd be pretty upset if the whole world was suddenly covered in plastic grass. But I'm also a firm believer that it has a really important part to play in a community's or a local government's overall strategy around sport and sport delivery. Synthetic turf provides something that natural turf cannot in terms of hours of use, all-weather play, always available. And I think it's really important that as a community, there's an option for playing on high-quality surfaces and giving people the opportunity to play sport and to run around, both from a physical and a mental health point of view. And where land is at a premium and we can't just build more fields, we have to make the fields we've got work harder and deliver more hours of use. And the most effective way to do that is with synthetic grass. So for me, a good sports strategy for a community would have natural turf fields and synthetic turf fields in key locations to satisfy that demand on use.
And what do synthetic fields do for a mature player who can play on it a bit longer? He's not as sore because of the shock pad and things like that. Is that what your view is as well?
Yeah, that's definitely my view, and it's certainly the experience, say, at Mitchelton. There's always a few people opposed to these things, or they're a bit unsure about this new technology, but actually it's, the masters grade players, in particular the men and women that are in their late 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s still playing. What they're finding when they come off these synthetic turf fields is they're not as sore, they're not struggling with injuries, and the surface is so uniform, so consistent. They can play the game as they want it. It's a predictable amount of ball roll, ball bounce, and they get a much more enjoyable game out of it, and they're not suffering for days afterwards.
I remember when the opening of Mitchelton, and there was a couple of junior games on there, and one of the fathers said that his son was going to have to wear a full suit because he wasn't sure what was going to be the effect of the grass if he slid, but he was quite surprised how natural it felt.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of misconceptions about synthetic turf.
There is.
Any others you can touch on that you've sort of qualified that hasn't been true?
Well, there's issues around heat. There's issues around environmental issues. I mean, they're probably entire podcasts for themselves.
Sure.
But ultimately, people are often very surprised when they get to run around and play on them, and they realise just how natural they feel, how good a game you can get on them. The major governing bodies of the world are all supporting synthetic turf and synthetic turf use, even at elite level and world-class level. And there's a reason for that, because you can actually get a very high-quality game of sport on them, as well as they can provide that reliable, consistent training surface that can just take a heck of a lot of use.
Well said. Your agronomic expertise, science of sport field play quality, has been a big part of your work nationally and globally on some of the world's highest profile tournaments, including the 2014 Football World Cup in Brazil, 2015 Women's World Cup in Canada, 2016 Olympics in Brazil, and the 2015, 16, 17 editions of the International Champions Cup in China and Singapore. Which was your most memorable and why out of those?
Look, each one of those were incredible opportunities, and I'm be forever grateful for the opportunity that each of them gave me to go and attend those events and be part of those events. But for me, the World Cup, the Senior Men's World Cup in Brazil, would be the standout one. It was a life-changing, career-changing. It was the first time for me to travel as an expert, if you like, and be embedded within a culture. And in particular, in this sense, I was there 2.5 months, which is a heck of a long time, really. And I really felt that it challenged me. I went over there with a certain degree of knowledge, and I think I came back with a heck of a lot more. And I think they learned from me, and it was really important for me that I was going to go there and not just give knowledge, but also to come back and having learned something and learn a different way of doing things and different chemicals and different conditions. And it was an incredible experience. Yeah.
You're really passionate about sharing your knowledge, which is great to see. You're always at the forefront of engaging with public speaking and things like that. Do you like public speaking?
Yeah, I do enjoy public speaking. I think it's, for me, one of the sort of cornerstones for success is about being able to communicate what you know and communicate it well. So it was important for me to be able to communicate what I know and learn, either in a scientific paper, either in a trade journal article, whether it's in a conference presentation. It's really important for me to be able to communicate that back to the industry and have that dialogue with industry.
You're a pretty proficient mountain biker, recreational. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so it's funny, I deal with a whole load of fields of play, but I don't really play any of those sports. I mean, I love watching them, but I certainly never had the skill to play. And I found cycling at a pretty young age. It was my sort of escape, my release, my sort of escape from home, my bit of freedom, grab my wheels and go. And I've kept that. So I ride road bikes, I ride mountain bikes, and I enjoy the competitive element of it as well. I recently completed a 4-day mountain bike race up in Cairns and Port Douglas, and my team partner and we came third in our age group, and we really pushed each other really hard. But we were also a great team. It was a really interesting team dynamic. We supported each other. We communicated our expectations. We both had strengths and weaknesses, which we capitalized on, and it was a fantastic experience.
Is it something that you've always had a passion for, or is it just since you've been in Australia?
Mountain biking, probably since I was about 14.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've raced and ridden. I've been quite lucky. I often take my bike with me when I go somewhere, and I've raced and ridden all over the world. Yeah.
That's great. With Sports Eng, I did my first podcast with Jared Hill a little while ago, and he's a pretty intuitive guy. What are some of the takeaways that he's given you as far as with the office here, and how have you sort of fallen in behind some of his values?
I think what I find really interesting about Jared is he's not afraid to take a few risks. He can see the big picture very quickly. He was very happy to invest in this office up here. He was very happy to support its growth. He can see what's required to continue that growth, and he's prepared to invest in it even if the outcome isn't always immediately available. So his confidence, his commitment to the business is really inspiring, and it really gets you behind him and gets behind his vision. And I think that's really been one of the key takeaways for me.
What's Dean Holden's part of the company?
So Dean was sort of joined the business around the same time as me, and his role is general manager. Yep. So he sort of sits kind of between Jared, Gray as the two directors, and then the rest of the staff. And he's the guy that forces us to fill in our timesheets and gets us to do all those process things and he does all the business analytics and the financial analytics, and he really reports on the business and manages the business from a human resource point of view, from a operations point of view. And it just relieved Jared and Gray of some of that day-to-day management and allowed Jared to really focus on quality control on certain projects, but primarily business development. And then it really freed up Gray to really focus on the technical delivery and the quality control. So Dean's been a fantastic addition to the business and has really fitted into that role very well.
Parks and Leisure Australia Queensland hosted a turf maintenance workshop at AFL Queensland. Can you share any valuable insights on that event you attended?
That was a great event. Actually, I was involved in organising that day as well.
Yeah.
And in fact, we're about to do another one this month. And what we were able to do is bring in a range of experts from the industry. I guess even some people you would consider competitors of ours. But these days are meant to be for everybody to learn from. Certainly, we don't protect them in any way. We are sponsors of the organisation as well. And those days are there to assist the clubs to raise the quality of their surfaces. So we have experts on irrigation, we have experts on setting up equipment and machinery, we have experts on chemicals and the different types of chemicals that might need to help manage their turf. And I think it was great to see how the industry came together so well, and then we're able to communicate all these different ideas and technologies and approaches back to the clubs so that they could take some of that away and then use it to improve the quality of their facilities.
Mark, how does you've obviously got family back in the UK. How long has it been since you've seen them?
I've actually been back to the UK a couple of times recently, so I last saw them in July. Yeah, but otherwise I'm here on my own. My family are back in England, UK I suppose, and not my parents are planning to come out in December, which I'm looking forward to.
Yep. You got brothers and sisters?
Yeah, so I've got 2 younger brothers.
Yep.
One of them's over in Dublin in Ireland. One of them's still fairly near sort of the family base. Both married. Youngest brother has 4 kids. You know, there's cousins, aunties, uncles. There's a great sort of crew back in the UK, and I really enjoy catching up with them when I go back. You know,
What do you like about the Australian culture?
I like how open it is, how relaxed it is. I like how we can take advantage of the great weather, and we do. It's a very outdoorsy based sort of culture.
Yep.
I just like how warm and friendly everybody is, and very accepting. It's a great culture. It's a great place to live.
Mark, I always ask my guests this. If you could place a call back to a time when you were 20, what advice would you give to that Mark then?
I think I'd probably say, sort of don't worry. You know, I was at 20 years old. I was coming up to the end of my degree. I wasn't really sure where I was heading or what I was doing. I wasn't sure what the next steps would be. And I certainly had no idea what the subsequent steps would be. And I think it would be a conversation to say, look, don't worry. You know, you've got this. It's all going to work out pretty well. Sort of follow your nose, follow your heart, follow your passion, and you'll get there.
And what about 20 years ahead? What advice would you have given to yourself if you listened back to this and if you were correct of what you thought?
I think the advice would be to keep being brave. I think I've got to where I've got to now by taking a few risks, you know, setting up my own business, stepping out, approaching Sport Eng, talking about setting up this office. And I think a lot of that good stuff happens perhaps on the outside of your comfort zone. And so I'd be telling myself, look, keep being brave, keep pushing the boundaries, keep looking for something new, never stop learning, and it'll all work out.
What sort of legacy do you want to leave?
I'd like to leave a legacy where we've really helped communities and community sport to improve, where sport has a huge role to play in the health, physical and mental health of our communities. And so if that legacy can be to have left behind a network of sports facilities that encourages people to play, that entices people to get out of their houses and to get into a sport of some kind, but whether it's a formal sport, whether it's just going down there with a group of friends and kicking a ball around, I think having high quality surfaces and sports facilities that people can go and enjoy and support the growth of sport for those and the growth of skills for those that really want to get into the sport. I think that's really important.
And how do you feel at the moment? There's a lot of participation with females and women coming into sports. It's great to see it happening. What's your take on that?
It's an interesting one. It feels weird that it's even a conversation topic. You know, I think people should play sport. It shouldn't matter whether you're male or female. And while it's great to sort of high five each other and slap each other on the back that we've now got facilities for women, it's kind of sad that we are having to high five each other, that we're now thinking about facilities for women.
Yep.
We're involved in a major project here in Brisbane where the focus will be around a playing and match venue for female sport. You know, and it's fantastic to see that it's been given that much attention. It just feels like it's long overdue.
Yeah, it feels a bit weird that we've taken this long, as you said, to get the female change rooms to be adequate for what they need.
Exactly.
Is it just been, we just haven't thought about it as the males?
Possibly. And I think perhaps we haven't created a culture within our clubs that has encouraged women and girls to come and play. And, you know, I think when you look back and think, why haven't we got so many women playing? And the answer is, well, we need to create an environment where they can come and play.
Yeah.
Then I think perhaps that's where we've fallen down in the past. And that's perhaps the really positive outcome from this, that we're providing facilities that will encourage young women and girls to say, actually, I would like to have a go at AFL. And there is a changing room that's nice and clean that I can go in and that a bunch of boys haven't made disgusting. Yep. So it's great that we are now doing it. And I think it's great for the growth of the sport. Sometimes it's a little baffling to think it's taken so long for us to get to this point.
Great positive note to finish on. Mark, we really appreciate your time and wish you all the best. Thanks for being on Behind the Games podcast, and thanks very much and good luck.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thanks for having me on the show. Thank you.